You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, what's good, everybody? Welcome into, Leafs Afternoon Take, a special trade deadline recap show. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you, presented by Betano. As we have this conversation, as we start this conversation, no deals yet have trickled in, but as we know, and we've learned in years past, moves can happen after the 3 o'clock Eastern deadline. But what's going on, Rosie?
I don't know. We might as well just done the show in the morning. It's no different, Nick, unless there isn't an 11th hour move, I guess.
Unless you can predict that, you know Stradamus now.
No, I'm just feeling underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Not happy about the game or the week in general. And now nothing much is really changing. I thought like a bit of a splash would be made of some sort, and it doesn't look like it is. Like you say, maybe an 11th hour thing gets pushed through, but it's not really looking that probable.
Yeah, I would say very unlikely. Again, we'll sift through what's transpired, what hasn't, as we have this conversation. Again, it doesn't seem like the Maple Leafs have done anything here on trade deadline day, and obviously we'll go through what the Leafs have done. We'll include the last week in that conversation. We'll look at what the Atlantic Division has done. There was a blockbuster trade just seconds before the 3 Eastern deadline, and Tomas Hertl somehow ending up in Vegas, man. It just never ends with the Golden Knights, eh?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, last year we've seen the Lightning do it. We were talking about it before the show. Like, they seem to be drastically over the cap on opening night of the playoffs, which I don't know. It seems like intentional, and I'm not blaming Vegas. You do what you're allowed to do, but like, how can you have? I think the Lightning were like $17-18 million over the cap one year when they won it, and the Vegas Golden Knights were considerably over last year. Now they got Mark Stone on LTIR again, and like, is he going to be activated game 1 of the playoffs? Like, there's got to be something done where teams aren't doing that, because it's flat out not fair. You have the only time of the year that it matters is the playoff, and you got a team that's $15 million over budget than everyone else is allowed to be. It's just not right. I thought they would do something to fix it after last year, and looks like here we go again.
Yeah, same old story when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, and you talk about some of their deadline pickups, just out of this world. You look at Hannafin, you look at Mantha, you look at Hertl now. It's pretty crazy when you look at Vegas in general. And also, obviously, moving forward with Mark Stone, we'll see if he does end up coming back to this roster for the Stanley Cup playoffs. At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast, which leads us to the appetizer, brought to you by DoorDash. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, $10 in value, and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25. All in uppercase, 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms apply. So we talked about deals trickling in past 3 Eastern time. It looks like the Leafs have made a deal with the Minnesota Wild, Rosie.
Connor Dewar,
a name we have speculated about the last couple weeks. They were looking to add a depth forward, and it seems like they've got him. 57 games so far this season with Minnesota, 10 goals, 14 points. I think he's an upgrade on some of the bottom 6 guys they have. So there's your ad up front.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Under 200 games played. He's 24 years old. Not overly big, not small. Yeah, it's all right. I'm not familiar with this guy. I'm going to be dead honest with you. I haven't watched him play a ton of games. Numbers just seem kind of overall all right, average. Like you said, a replacement for a bottom six guy. If you're here to work your absolute nuts off and bang and crash and get in everyone's face and be nothing but intensity and energy, then welcome aboard. Not sure if he's that guy or not, but in my mind, that is what they're looking for. Basically the identity of the Florida Panthers is what we want to instill a little bit of. So hopefully Connor Dewar is that, but I'm going to go do a little bit more research on this fine fellow and see how excited the deal makes me. What do we give up?
Yeah. So, not much on the return just yet. I think he's a bottom six guy. He's going to bring some jump. He's going to bring some energy. I do watch the Minnesota Wild quite a bit. They're actually one of my favorite teams to watch in the league. Love Kaprizov and Zuccarello and guys like that, but they have been fading in the playoff race. So they have been selling, which, by the way, has been very uncharacteristic for Minnesota. Like the one thing we've learned over the last, we'll say like 2 decades, the Wild make the playoffs. This year, they're not going to make the playoffs, and they sold off some of their assets. So I think you look at Dewar specifically. I just think he's another body to add in the bottom six, and I do think he plays up from a guy like a Noah Gregor. I think Pontus Holmberg would be in that conversation too, but I think a Dewar is a guy, like if you're bringing him in, and we'll see what the return is on this deal, it's going to be a guy who plays up from a guy like Gregor. I think at the very least they were looking for depth. They got depth, but I don't want to make too much of this acquisition.
Yeah, Gregor's kind of struggled to get in the lineup and to make an impact when he did. When he does, the other night he was playing, and just as fast as he can skate, like he is an obviously and visibly faster skater than a lot of guys out there, but he just hasn't seemed to be able to put it to good use this year. The physical side of the game he doesn't engage with too much, and like you said, I just think that this guy with his PK ability and just kind of overall utility guy attitude could probably be an upgrade on a guy like him. So, like I said, you watch him more than I. You seem to like him, but again, if he brings some snap and some snarl and some playoff mentality, then welcome aboard.
So just a couple of Coles notes. And Michael Russo does a fantastic job covering the Minnesota Wild for The Athletic. Dewar has spent the past 2 seasons as the Wild's fourth-line center, as a key penalty killer, has 10 goals, 4 assists, 57 games this season, drafted in the 3rd round, 92nd overall in 2018. He's a pending restricted free agent with arbitration rights, coming off a 2-year deal at $800K cap hit. And so he's a depth add. He's a guy they've been looking for, like that 4th-line type center option who can kill penalties. And I think it does tick some boxes. But again, speaking in generalities, like this is my expectation. This was my expectation for the deadline. But I think adding some depth never hurts this time here, especially as you get ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got our eggs in the big boy basket. They've got to go do their thing, and you need to surround them with the things that they're lacking, and that is those intangibles, those depth pieces, that defensive style, that PK, that shot block, that kind of thing. And we need to be defensively responsible and keep the puck out of our net and give the guys up front an opportunity to do their thing. So, I mean, I think this is just another one of those pieces. Who does he replace back there? Like the David Camps and Noah Gregors of the world are probably looking at this saying, this could be the writing on the wall for me. So we'll see what happens with the lineup view after the deadline here. But like you said, just smaller fringe pieces that are depth adds that hopefully can plug the holes and make some kind of a difference in this lineup.
So obviously, I mean, we have our finger on the pulse of social media and Leafs Nation, and there seems to be a lot of uproar. So I'll give you the floor as to what people were expecting from deadline day, like who they were expecting the Maple Leafs to pick up. I would love to know.
Apparently Sidney Crosby
Yeah,
was a buzz
that
last
dude,
night.
and I get the consternation, but I also understand what transpired last spring that involved trading for everybody and their mother. They got like 10 new players. They got O'Reilly. They blew their load. I think the GM knew his job was on the line. And what did that get them? 2 extra wins, right? Like it in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's a gamble every year. We talk about this every deadline season. On top of that, it wasn't a great market, as you can tell from some of the names out there. Like maybe I'm in the minority. I'm not as disappointed as some people. I just didn't see a name out there that made sense for the Leafs that they could do it. And I actually respect them for having patience at this year's deadline.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it goes back to not getting a stud defenseman. I wanted a Walker from Philadelphia. I wanted a Tanev, like a guy with a little bit of jam, a guy that can play that rugged spirit where you're just seeing him all the time in the playoffs, and you make a big run against a big foe in the East in first or second round, and that guy shows up and just is just one of those big meaty pieces that you can look back on and say, man, if we didn't have that guy, I don't know if we would have won that series. And was looking to get one of those guys, and didn't happen. So that's kind of where my disappointment comes from. Once those guys are off the table, the better part of today, I'm sitting here going, be nice to make a splash, be nice for something to happen, but who, how, and why? Like you say, there wasn't a lot of pieces out there that made sense. You could tell just from the onset that Treliving was not really set on getting rid of that first round pick. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, it was in his mind that I'm not going to give this away for something that doesn't totally make sense in my gut, and then watch that pick go off to somebody else and flourish into some star. And forever and ever, my name's linked to giving this guy away for screw all, and it didn't work. And now this guy's, supposed to be on our team, and he's flourishing elsewhere. So I get that it's tough to have that as a GM when you make those deals, and it's always talked about like which gave up a first round pick, which turned out to be this guy, and it's tough. So he kept that in his pocket, and at the end of the day, what this tells me is that Brad Treliving is saying this is the group that we have. This is like we've got enough money, we've got enough assets, we've got enough talent. Go and win with this group. You've shown that you can play good hockey, you can go on runs, but I don't really think that he thinks it's a personnel problem. He's saying you guys have all the tools to do the job. Now it's time to get your attitude and your heads right and get on the same page. Everyone get on board, get on that train, and away you go into the playoffs. And last night was a pretty disappointing result on the scoreboard, but if you look at some of the jam and vigor and intensity the guys played with, maybe a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel as far as the playoffs are concerned.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to get into that Boston game. Surprise, surprise, they lost again to the Boston Bruins. And I'm just not one for excuses. I understand it was the back end of a back-to-back, but there's a lot to dissect from that game. We'll get to that. But I think primarily you look at this deadline. I understand why they didn't give it the first-round pick. Like, tell me a name out there that, A, you trade for a first-round pick, and B, you'd be able to stomach the salary that comes with the first round with getting the player. There isn't a name out there. Like, obviously, I'm sure they tried to make a deal that made sense. I understand, like, the same people that were, talking about last year and going all in and complaining about, oh, they just did this and that, and how can they give up their assets, are the same people now bitching about them not giving up the first round pick. Like, make up your fucking minds. It's crazy to me.
Did you bookmark their tweets from last year and make
I
sure they're the
should.
same people?
I should. It's just the market. Like, dude, I hated this market. I thought it was dog shit. Honestly, I feel for what the market was and what the Leafs were available to do. I think they did okay. Like, you can't remake your roster over a 2-week
No.
span. Like, I'm sorry to break it to people. This is going to take longer. Like, Brad Treliving is finally going to get a chance to, sink his claws, if you will, into the blue line this summer. Like, I would expect full sale changes on the back end. I just think I don't mind the idea of like putting the onus on the players, Rosie. I don't know how you feel about this. Put the onus on the players again. Because I think if they ultimately fall short, they can't get out of the first round. I think you make the decision even easier. I don't care if it's a head coach or making a big time trade. You make that decision easier knowing that you put it in the players' hands again,
Yeah, and you wonder if he's got something up his sleeve for the offseason here in free agency, where he's got that number one kind of, what he does with that, gets the guy who knows who that's going to be. I'm not sure how deep the draft is this year, but I could just see him sinking his claws into, a big stud D-man and moving some bodies around and putting some money elsewhere. And maybe he gets creative and packages something up and gets a guy off his no move clause. I don't know, but he seemed like he wanted to hold on to that number one and that he may have plans for the summertime. And that's not to say at all that he's bailing on this team. This is a good hockey team. They've proved it over the last month. And just because he didn't like I agree with you, just because he didn't like show fireworks, explosive
Mhm.
changes, and look at this new shiny Leafs that's going to fire into the playoffs on all. It's like, well, who the hell was that guy going to be? Like, I don't know. That was a first rounder not involved in the Philly Walker trade. Like, I don't think.
Yeah, but the kicker on that one, I think the only true first rounder that was actually dealt outside of the Hurdle deal that went down between Vegas and San Jose was like Sean Monahan, but I think there was a condition. The kicker on the first deal was that Philadelphia had to take Ryan Johansson's contract, which is a hefty contract. So that's why the first round pick was in play.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you wonder, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, man. With this market, there's so many people and so many opinions that if you give up a first rounder and get what you could get for the first, people are going to be bitching about it. Saying, do you think this guy really is going to be a big game changer? What about go look at his DB? What about his stats makes you think he's going to be the big difference maker? And now we're down a first rounder. Do you know who that could have been? Oh, I can't wait to see what so and so does with this pick and what he turns into. You don't do anything. Well, what do you think you're doing? Well,
Yeah.
you can't win. So I'm not going to sit here and like I haven't even been on Twitter today.
Yeah.
I just don't really have the energy for it, and there's nothing really that has happened that's going to make anybody's opinion
No.
real important to me. So you stay off, and it's they've plugged some holes and sealed some gaps, got some strength in some areas that they could use it, but realistically this team has already been established with the contracts they've given out to the big fellas. I mean,
Mhm.
that's your team right there. It's ride or die with these guys. And if William Nylander keeps playing hit and miss hockey where he's terrible one night and then pretty goddamn good the next night and then fucking terrible the next night, you're not going to win. And if Mitch Marner plays in the perimeter and overthinks the whole game, you're not going to win. And if Austin Matthews just gets cold and just can't get on the scoreboard, you're just not going to win. All your eggs are kind of in that basket right now. So at the end of the day, no matter what Brad Treliving did, it comes down to what are these guys going to go and shoot the lights out in the playoffs and do what it takes to get on the scoreboard and to get the W's in playoff series, or are they not? Are they going to fall short again? And it's yet to be seen, but they're absolutely going to get another crack at it this year. And unfortunately, they're in a division where you are facing just beast after beast because the division's so heavy. I mean, just look at what the Lightning have done in the last 5 years. The Florida Panthers speak for themselves, and the Boston Bruins are always the Boston Bruins. It's difficult. So time to step up and let the big boys be big boys. I mean, we've said it before, and it's no different this year.
The return, by the way, for Connor Dewar is a 2026 fourth round pick. So we'll be like 800 years old, and that player will be Austin Matthews will be like 40 by the time that pick enters the NHL. So a low risk reward type move. Like I mean, again, we're not gonna talk about this deal for 40 minutes. It's a minor move. It complements a minor deadline, I thought, in general for Brad Treliving. So they acquire Ilya Lyubushkin, Joel Edmondson, Cade Weber. If you haven't checked it out yet, I did something with Colby Cohen, who obviously has close ranks to the college ranks, got his thoughts in the Cade Weber pickup. He called him a shot blocking machine. So the Leafs gave up a 6th round pick to get him. We'll see if they sign him. And surprise, surprise, they lose a player on waivers. William Lagesson claimed off waivers from Anaheim today. But I thought it'd be a good form and a good time to go over their back end. So entering the postseason, entering this stretch drive, Rosie, they're going to go with 9 defensemen. So Riley Lyubushkin, Brody McCabe, Benoit Liljegren, Edmondson Giordano, and Timmins. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I thought that Gio would kind of get pushed out of that. Did you have him slotted as 6 there?
No, I think Gio's he's probably 8 or 9. He's 8 or 9. Like, let's go through it. Riley's ahead of him. Lyubushkin's ahead of him. Brody's ahead of him. McCabe's ahead of him. I think Benoit obviously is ahead of him. Liljegren's ahead of him. Edmondson's ahead of him. I think he's 8.
Yeah, so there you go. That's what they're going to roll with. And I don't mind it because these guys can go out and they can play as hard as they goddamn well want. And there are spare parts behind you if guys get banged up or need a bit of a break before the playoffs, or someone is blocking shots and breaks their hand or their foot. In comes a fairly reliable backup. It seems like it's not a world beating defensive army by any means, but there's some reliable guys in there that all have their strengths, and now you can kind of take your pick. My one worry is that Sheldon Keefe is going to have an ever-moving, revolving door of defensemen in and out of the lineup,
Oh
which
man,
I
here
don't
we go.
think is the recipe for success. I think
Yeah.
you just gotta I think you gotta pick your guys and you gotta roll with them and you gotta have a meeting with the other guys that are not gonna play and say, "Be ready, be in shape, but this is where we're going, and you're expected to be a pro and be ready to go if we call on you, but we're rolling with these guys into the playoffs." I just don't think that's his style. If the way he runs the forwards is any indication, and he loves mixing it up and fucking bringing people in and out and in and out. And here, top six, bottom six. You're playing with Riley. No, you're playing with Benoit. No, you're over here. No, it's crazy. So I'll see what he does with it, but I just kind of hope for the players' sake that it's not a revolving door of 9 defensemen.
Dude, it's wild that you brought back memories of last year. Remember they had 9 defensemen on the roster and how horny Sheldon Keefe was to utilize all of them. We saw all of them. And man, I guarantee you there will be multiple games down the stretch, maybe even into the cup playoffs where they go with 11-7. Our favorite configuration, 11-7. It's happening, right? You're going to have Geo Spark out there as a 7th D. Like, I'm more curious like, where Edmonton fits into this conversation because I sort of felt like writing could be on the wall with an Edmonton coming in, especially for a guy like Liljegren. And we'll get to that Boston game. He just doesn't do well in playoff style hockey, man. Like he got tossed around, man. He got tossed around in that game. And we're going to see some different configurations. I just wondered how Liljegren fit into the puzzle, you know?
Are you talking about Lily getting tossed around?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think that him and Geo could get pushed out. I'm just
Like
looking
you're
at it
picking
like
up Edmonton. He's playing in your 6, right?
for sure,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Hold on, like Riley Labushkin.
Yeah. You want me to read them off for you?
Yes, Riley
So
Bush.
Riley Labushkin, Brody McCabe, Benoit Liljegren,
Oh,
Edmondson Giordano, and Timmins. Timmins is back from mono.
I had Brody. I didn't have Brody penciled in there. Yeah, sometimes, man, someone's got to go, and I think Gio and Lily would be obvious. But there's probably. Do you think Brody's like on the cusp where maybe you
Mm.
put him in and out if you're going to revolve some guys and rotate and try some different configurations and pairings? Maybe Brody can come out. Sometimes I like him, and then sometimes I'm just like, man, you're so out of your element. You're always like reaching a step behind, and you're always playing catch up, and it's difficult to watch without a whole lot of physical snap to him either. So sometimes I look at that and was thinking like if you can bring in some bodies that alleviate the pressure on him or in the lineup in general, but maybe these guys are playing more minutes and Brody's going to be in a better position to take a more reasonable workload for a guy like him and not get out of his element all the time and being playing tired and in situations that he's not used to or maybe not capable of, and maybe he'll get slotted into a spot where he can flourish a little bit more. But yeah, we'll see. I just know that they have a lot of bodies and a lot of numbers, and that coach behind the bench is pretty famous for using absolutely everything in every scenario with every combination imaginable. So we'll see if he does that again, even though I do not like that very much.
Appreciate the reminder in the chat. Timmins is on LTIR, but he is cleared for playing hockey again after mono. So there will be a point in time where that conversation is had. I know a lot of people getting snarky in the chat about Timmins. He is involved in that back end. He will be involved in that conversation. He's not just going to go away. Lou Lamoriello's not here. We're going to hear Matt Murray. I'll be honest, a bit stunned they're going with 3 goalies. Like I would think, and maybe nothing was out there. Like to me, for a team like the Maple Leafs, where every penny counts, it's kind of crazy that you have a goalie as a third goalie on your roster utilizing cap space. But again, what do I know, you know?
Well, if they didn't have anyone else that they had slated to come in there and use that cap space, then fine. I mean, maybe they're just using it as an insurance policy. Like, what if Sammy goes down? What if Wool re-aggravates his ankle or does his knee or groin or someone's back goes or someone gets a concussion like last year, whatever the case is, then all of a sudden, what's your tandem here? You got, you're calling someone up and who's never been part of this process at all, and you got to run with the one guy where if it's Samsonov, he's potentially fragile to go back to the place. I mean, nobody knows why he had such a bad start to the year, and nobody knows why he turned it around so well. So that leads me to believe anything's possible with him, regressing back to that style of play. And then with Wool, he's just kind of inexperienced. I think he's taken a confidence hit that I don't agree with him being in even the position to have to take this week with him playing back-to-backs against Boston, coming off of a 3-month injury. And, but if something were happened to that, one of those players, then all of a sudden you're looking pretty bleak. But now you got, Martin Jones back there to do what he's done this year and do what he's proven he's capable of is hold the fort down when they've got goalie issues.
A lot of fascination with this team. Again, if you're just tuning in, the Maple Leafs' only move of substance on deadline day, Connor Dewar being acquired from the Minnesota Wild in exchange for a 2026 fourth-round pick, sort of completes a week-long of activity for Brad Treliving, working around the edges a bit here. Ilya Lyubushkin, Joel Edmondson. They brought in Cade Weber, who's an NCAA prospect with Boston University. He's unsigned. And again, William Lagesson claimed off waivers earlier today by the Anaheim Ducks at the Leafs Nation 401. By the way, if you're watching for the first time, are not subscribed to our channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. At the Leafs Nation 401, we're also available in podcast form. Just search Leafs Morning Take. This segment, by the way, brought to you by Douglas, named Canada's best mattress in Canadian living. Douglas is loved by more than 200,000 Canadians, and they're backed by over 10,000 five-star reviews. Every mattress order comes with a free comfort sleep bundle, 2 memory foam pillows with pillow protectors, 1 luxurious cotton sheet set, and 1 mattress protector. Order today at douglas.ca/LMT. That's douglas.ca/LMT. So elsewhere, looking in the Atlantic Division, the Florida Panthers got Vladimir Tarasenko yesterday. They got Kyle Oposo, the captain of the Buffalo Sabres, earlier today in a bit of a stunner. Boston, man, I love this. Patrick Maroon reunited with Jack Edwards after he called him pretty much fat a couple years ago. So that should be a fun little reunion. Andrew Peeke brought in. And then Tampa acquires Anthony Duclair and Matt Dumba. So it's not like just the Leafs. I think the biggest move in the division, as far as we know right now, is Vladimir Tarasenko. I wonder how he fits in there in Florida.
Yeah, it didn't work out last year for the Rangers,
True.
with them picking up him and Patty Kane. It looked like they were going to be a wagon going into the playoffs and just definitely didn't happen. We'll see. We'll see if he's a difference maker or not. But, I was thinking about him when he got dealt. I'm like, within like 12 and a half months, 4 teams for a guy, his bags are just permanently packed, being on those deals that make you an asset for trade deadline to be moving around with rental space and whatnot. So he's been bouncing around. We'll see if he can make an impact in Florida or not. But man, the division's just so heavy as it is. I think about the game last night and how it went down, and then to add a Patrick Maroon, which he's not the fastest guy in the world, and he's not playing with McDavid anymore, but this guy's got Stanley Cups. He's been on tons of runs. He's kind of a playoff performer. He's a veteran. He knows how to handle himself in the trenches and in the thick of things, as far as getting under guys' skins, playing the game within the game, and being that grindy type of guy. And he's tough too, and will get into the scrums and drop his gloves if need be. And he's an asset for the Boston Bruins to pick up. And just not exactly the greatest of news. Not that it's a deal breaker or anything, but for the Florida or for the Toronto Maple Leafs that are most likely going to face them in the playoffs, to pick up a guy of his experience level doesn't exactly say the greatest things after the results this week.
I think the fortunate thing from a Leafs perspective is, like, in their division, again, outside of Florida, I still wonder about chemistry. Like, I know they get Tarasenko, but as you referenced, last year's deadline doesn't necessarily mean you do anything if you get good players, right? It's all about chemistry and putting that roster together, and they have plenty of character on that Florida Panthers roster. But again, you look at the potential first-round opponent, I think I would say it's more likely it's Boston. It could be Florida. But Boston doesn't really add, man. Like, they still have what they have up the middle. Patrick Maroon's the guy who's going to drag you into the fight. He's played the Leafs before the last couple runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs with Tampa. And Andrew Peeke's been in and out of that Columbus lineup all season long on the back end. He's the guy that the Leafs were linked to a couple months back in terms of D, but like his game has significantly fallen off this season. So it's not like other teams around him did much. I think in general, Rosie, my takeaway from the deadline just wasn't much out there outside of Vegas, just acquiring Hannafin and Hurdle and Mantha. Crazy, man.
Yeah. Yeah, they're working, man. And again, you can't blame them for it. It's they're working within the rules that are set forward. I'm just wondering if, the amount of, I just want to know what they're looking at cap wise once the playoffs, they drop the puck on it. Cause I have a feeling it's going to be a bit of an eye roll on how is this allowed type of a thing. And it's not the first time it's happened. So I'm surprised it hasn't been addressed, but yeah, good on them for making moves. Looks like they want to go make another run this year and win back-to-back cups. But No, I just think with a team like Boston, to me, like they've been banged up. They don't have their big boys in the lineup. They've got fill-in guys left, right, and center. And to me, that with the way Monty's coached those guys, the second he took over the team, they just took off. They just absolutely took off. And I'm not sure what exactly to put into words what that system is, but it's a very effective one. And he seems to be really good at getting everyone on the same page of playing the same system. And doesn't seem to really matter when they move personnel around. They've got the same kind of mentality and structure as a hockey team to go into buildings and play really good hockey like they did this week against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, you know, I personally have been calling for the Leafs to take a page out of that book for a while and integrate a system that everyone can fall back on and rely on, and that they look around the locker room, they know everyone's on the same page, going at their business the same way. And by no means does that have to stifle the creativity or handcuff the skilled players, because it certainly doesn't with the teams like the Boston Bruins. So it just looked a little. I mean, if we're gonna get into the game, we just seem more scattered than a team like the Boston Bruins, who seem really, really aware of who they are and what they're going about when they're entering a hockey game.
Yeah, let's get in the game recap now. Roll Up to Win is back for Tim's 60th anniversary. And to celebrate their big year, you can win some big prizes like an electric Volkswagen ID4, a sun-soaked Hilton getaway, and cash with a daily jackpot of $10,000. Play today on the Tim's app. And again, if you're new to the show, at the Leafs Nation 401, pound that subscribe button, pound that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast, and we'll pop up. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. That'd be fantastic. But getting back to this one, the second loss to the Bruins this week, 4-run variety again. First winless season versus the Bruins since 2011, 2012. First and foremost, I think it's important to highlight, yeah, I don't feel great about this potential matchup, but the regular season does not fucking matter. So I will block the first person who brings up in my mentions that, oh, they got swept by Boston in the first round. You know what? I remember back to the early 2000s where Ottawa they ragdolled the Leafs in the regular season. Playoffs a bit of a different story, Rosie.
Oh, I agree. It's not 100% indicative of what's going to happen, but if you were to choose what side of that coin flip you would be on, you wouldn't choose to
Sure.
be on the side that the Leafs are on right now. And when you talk about regular seasons and playoffs, it's not like the Leafs are prototypically a weak regular season team and then a dominant playoff team. So there's another kind of a notch against the Toronto Maple Leafs when you're comparing them against the Boston Bruins. That being said, I just think that, one of the bright spots in the game last night is some of the aggression and physicality they have. McCabe, I mean, you call it what you want. He just goes and kind of cross checks two guys in the face. I don't personally, that's not the way I would go about it, just to take 4 minutes on one guy for no reason, or two guys, but be a little bit
It took 4
sneakier.
minutes and $5,000 too.
Yeah, I could give two shits if they fine anyone $5,000 on this team. It's irrelevant to me. It's all about, that doesn't hurt the team whatsoever. It hurts the guy's checking account, which he could give a shit about. But I like Domi going after everyone and getting in their faces, and he kind of did it the right way. I like Bertuzzi doing it. Like, he was pissed off. Like, those first couple fucking bombs he threw, left-handed as well. We should do some research on if he goes lefty very often or not, but just convincingly beat this kid down. Like, I want more of that, but I want it in a structural way where you're sneaky about it, where you're not just blatantly mauling a guy, clearly going to take a penalty, but like give a guy a little shot in the scrum, like a little spear to the inside of the leg, and make him punch you in the face, and then look around and then get your power play and then score, and then wink at him when he comes out of the penalty box. Like, piss them off, be in control, be the fucking mature leaders that are experienced veterans about your business. But baby steps with this team, and the fact that they're showing some aggression and throwing it around and getting pissed off and not taking things lightly is a good sign. I just know it's not ingrained in as part of their DNA so far this year. So if they want to pick it up now, great. I would just like them to do it kind of strategically to their advantage rather than just taking penalties all over the place.
I thought the result, quite honestly, was irrelevant to that game. Like you, I like the pushback of some of the team, I'll say. I think Domi and Bertuzzi showed me a little something in that game. Like, I didn't even know Bertuzzi had a left. And I know people in the chat saying he fought a guy who doesn't fight. The guy went, okay, and he actually did something. He showed some snarl. He showed that player that we've been expecting, that playoff brand. And I think most importantly, the Leafs showed on Thursday night they're not going to back away from that fight like they have in recent years. Like, I love McCabe's response when they went after Nylander and it was Trent Frederick. Brad Marchand is such a great pest, but what makes him so amazing is that he can score, and he's just so good at his job. Like, I fucking couldn't stand when he's pointing at the bench. But again, that's what happens when you take dumb penalties. They're gonna kill you. And David Pastrnak, again, I don't want to have that conversation about contracts. That guy always fucking shows up. And Willie Nylander, all that guy wanted to do was have that conversation how he should be in the same realm as David Pastrnak. And then I watched what transpired on Thursday night where William Nylander was one of the worst players, period, on the ice in that game. And we're going to have that conversation where I watch Pastrnak night in and night out be the best player for the Boston Bruins. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know. First of all, if Bertuzzi fights a guy that doesn't fight, even better. Get a guy off the ice who has skill elsewhere and kick the shit out of him and goad him into doing something he doesn't want to do. I love it. Do that to every guy you possibly can. As far as, like Nylander, you just have to be more consistent. Like you say, Pastrnak, you just know what he's going to give you every single night. You know he's going to be effective. You know he's going to be consistent, whether, he's going to have some 3-point nights and he's going to have some nights where he doesn't get on the score sheet, but it's always going to be kind of the same, the same effort level, the same consistency, the same standout performance for what the guy does. Where with Nylander, you're like, you could be the best player on the ice tonight, or you could be the friggin' worst player on. And there's no night that Pastrnak is the worst player on the ice. It's just, it just doesn't happen. And
dude,
it's like we've talked about it this week with him getting called out and then having a kind of an average game and getting benched and coming out with a fantastic game, then coming back to Boston again and kind of shitting his pants with some terrible giveaways and effort levels. And you just can't have that in the playoffs, man. You absolutely can't. You want to be the big boy, like you say, you want to compare yourself to Pastrnak. It also comes with some consistency where you need to be relied on, man. And I don't know, just some glaring problems. It's a tough week to really dissect the team and to talk about the trade deadline because they get smacked around by Boston twice. And the first one I wasn't too worked up about. I was kind of trying to really, calm the storm about the way people were reacting to it. I didn't think it was as bad as people were saying, but last night it just appeared to me, and I used the analogy at the after show game, that it looked like the Toronto Maple Leafs were the young rookie, and it looked like the Boston Bruins were the wily veteran. And there's no saying one's better than the other. Like a rookie can go out there and do things very well, but it just seemed like they knew what they were doing. They'd seen this movie before. They had a plan. They knew how to execute it. There was no panic. They were just very detail oriented. And the Leafs were just kind of like, what's going to happen here? Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll try that. Where's this guy? Holy, do we try that? Who's going to do? Oh, it's just kind of all over the place, looking around like just kind of deer in the headlights, like a bit of immaturity and a bit of inexperience. And that just isn't the case when you play the Bruins. Like, you look at Marchand, the way they go about their shit, they're just going to, it doesn't matter what way you present to them. They will play that game and they will most likely win at it. That's what they've been doing for years. But not to say they can't be beat, but they just got outclassed by the Boston Bruins this week, and they're going to have to reset. And the only saving grace is if they do play them, I could see the Boston Bruins maybe taking them lightly, being happy they're playing them, knowing they got their number, and maybe taking them a little bit too lightly. And, they've done that in the past, obviously, last year with one of the greatest teams ever in the regular season history, a one round and out. So that could be something that happens, although I would think that they've learned their lesson since last year. We'll see, but not the best look this week, man.
Brad Treliving speaking right now, by the way, so the Leafs are done, saying Matthew Knies is doing well. Anticipation is he will play tomorrow. What did you make of the accidental on purpose Brad Marchand, Matthew Knies situation? Knies, he leaves in the first period, does not return in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Marchand went out there to do it, but I think that he saw the collision coming far before Knies did. And you can see he lifts his lead foot to plant his back foot because that's what you do, so that when the force comes, your back foot's edge is planted. You can't go that way. You're not the one getting knocked down. And he kind of, leaned into the guy as a body check. Not that he went out there with his intent to go hit him, but you could see from the bottom of the circle as he's turning up towards the slot, he kind of sees him first. Knies didn't see him at all. So Knies was completely unprepared, had his skates going straight without any, ability to absorb that hit. And Marchand last second kind of throws his weight into him, which you can't really blame him for. But of course it's Marchand. Of course it's one of those did he mean to, did he not type of things. And of course, Marchand's in the position to even have that spoken about. He's just, whether he means to or not, it's just he's world class at getting in there and being part of those things that take players out, hurt players, run players, get away with penalties, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't think it was like real nasty or intentional, but I do know that Marchand saw him before Knies saw anything, and he braced himself accordingly and obviously got the positive end of that collision. And I thought Knies was going to be pretty hurt. I thought he might have broken his wrist the way he got up and then he's like, no, got to drop your stick. It makes you think that, a wrist was broken in that collision or something, but it sounds like he's all right. So that's good. A good thing. That's the second time this week a guy looks like he's going to be completely out of the lineup for the foreseeable future, and he's back the next night. So good news for the Maple Leafs. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into the Marchand thing. There's enough things to get up in arms about over that, rather than focusing on Marchand's business again.
I'll just say that I like the reaction, right? Because that was a big combo in November with Liljegren. There was no reaction. Max Domi tried to go him. I mean, if you want to turtle, you're going to turtle. I mean, you're Brad Marchand. We know his game by now. He's not going to go. Domi went after McAvoy too. Like, Domi showed me something. So did Bertuzzi. Again, this is what we're looking from that team, and I like that aspect of it. Even, again, it reminded me a lot of Nick Foligno a couple years back. And say what you want about Foligno, but the guy's a leader. I mean, he was hurt playing in Toronto. But John Tavares, the whole Corey Perry thing, Perry didn't mean to do it on purpose, but what Foligno did, he went up to him and said, we have to go, you know this, and Perry obliged, and that was it. And I think to that point, the same shit happened here with Marchand. Whether you think he did it or not, you have to hold people accountable, and I thought they did a good job of that.
Yeah, like, this is more of what I thought we were getting with Domi when we signed him. I thought he was a little wrecking ball. I remember him, like, what he knock out, not Bieksa, but he was on the he's one of the leader boys on the Vancouver Canucks. What's that?
I don't remember who it was in the Canucks. Yeah, I sort of remember. Yeah,
I'm sure the guys, but he like one punch knocked this guy out, and I was like, oh, he's got a heavy hand, and he'll scrap if he has to, and he'll hold guys accountable. And he's, especially this day and age where it's not like there's heavyweights running around 3 on a team. A guy of his size could kind of police a little bit more and keep all those kind of middle of the road guys accountable. And he hadn't really done that all season, man. He's kind of just out there playing and hoping and trying to get some points. Kessler, that's who he knocked out. So
thanks to Tim in the chat, by the way. A couple of you in the chat bringing that up. Appreciate that.
Thanks, fellas. But I thought he was a little heavier handed. I thought he was a little more gritty. I thought he had some more snarl, and I was kind of like, geez, I thought Domi like played with, a little bit more physicality. He hasn't, but then last night he showed up and showed that he's capable and he understands it. So if he just wants to save that for the playoffs, that's fine with me. But I want to see more of that. I want to see running around, grabbing guys by the scruff of their neck, getting in their face. I think he can be effective in doing that. And he seems to do it in a way that maybe it'll be coincidental penalties, or he doesn't put the team down at all. And there's a fine art to that too, because it's a fine line with different, referees and officials. And, you can kind of push that a little more in the playoffs. So I'm looking to him to be, a factor in the first round, in the first couple of games. You got to run around and take control out there and let those guys know who they're playing. Because if you just sit back, other teams will do that to you, and you'll get pushed out of the barn, which they've ran into before.
Definitely has a bit of his old man in him, which is great to see. Again, at the Leafs Nation 401, if you're watching right now, please subscribe, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Really, really appreciate that. Want to get your thoughts on something that I thought was really, really mind-numbing looking back to that game against Boston. So you referenced it. A heinous giveaway at the blue line. Last man back for Willie Nylander. Trent Frederick comes in, scores on the B-way, 5-hole. And then the Leafs get a power play like a minute later, and everything that Sheldon Keefe said earlier this week went out the window. Accountability. We're going to hold players accountable. It was something like that. You guys know exactly in the chat what I'm talking about. He said we're gonna start holding our players accountable, and he throws Nylander right back out there. So anything Sheldon Keefe says for the rest of the season and moving on, I'm going to take with a grain of salt, because that's absolute bullshit, right? I think if Nylander is going to be the guy that you demonstrate that accountability thing with a couple weeks ago, why wasn't he after costing his team? Like, I know that wasn't the big story in the game, but it was part of the reason why they lost. I mean, they just gift wrapped a breakaway to Trent Frederick.
Yeah, that comes with Willie, exuding nothing but confidence. A guy like me would be on that blue line just, chopping that puck up and protecting it for his life,
Yeah.
knowing he's the last guy back. But, a guy like Nylander would be out there just kind of looping and exposing the puck and one quick little toey and it's back to where he wants it. And that's how he plays. He's got lots of confidence. He doesn't worry about that kind of shit, but it bit him in the ass there. I mean, he exposed the puck. Had it in a vulnerable position with absolutely nobody back. Your last man back. You got to make sure you're protecting that thing. And he didn't do it. Got picked off, went down, breakaway, 5-hole, see you later. And to your point, that means he's probably not going to be rewarded with power play time or whatever. But I guess in Sheldon Keefe's mind, it's just one of those, it's a mistake. It's something that happens. The guy picked his pocket there. I don't know if that means you're gonna, like, the effort level stuff to me is what gets me. The lack of, like, the rest of the stuff, like, I think it was the Boston first game or maybe the game before, but where he went to get his D-man and kind of like tried to do the exact same thing and batted away from his D-man and going to breakaway, didn't get there, and then just goes for an absolute Sunday skate. That's the kind of shit I'd staple your ass to the bench for. But getting a turnover there, yeah, I know what you mean. I just don't know if that's the time to keep him accountable. I think it should have happened already. But
Yeah.
again, with Keefe, I don't feel that there is that preaching of accountability, of intensity, of systematic play, of commitment to defense first. And, there's going to be consequences and accountability. It just seems like, come on, guys, go out there and do your best. Let's get one. Let's win one. Go out there and score a bunch, however you want to do it. And it doesn't seem to work this day and age. Teams are too systematically responsible. They have ways of counteracting all kinds of different offenses. And I just don't think it's if that is the case, it's not really one to go into the playoffs with. And that's kind of my gripe with Sheldon Keefe, is I don't really know what the preach is to this team on what their identity is. Is it just, we have three good guys that can score a lot of goals, hopefully we win? That's not good enough for me. And it's showing there against the big boy teams like the Boston Bruins this week.
It sure did, and they got 19 games to prepare themselves for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and a seemingly inevitable matchup here with the Boston Bruins. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and daily face-off. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning despite your lack of team-building skills. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat, along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play daily face-off to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. So the second of three meetings, man, I can't believe it. A division rival, original six rival, and game 64 is going to be the second meeting of the season with the Montreal Canadiens. Way back when, opening night, remember that 6-5 shootout victory for the Maple Leafs? That was the last time they played the Habs.
Yeah, I hardly remember that, man. It's weird that we, haven't played them since, and we only play them 3 times, and we've got them twice in the last 19. But with their history and everything, speaks for itself. But here's an example of a time where the Maple Leafs have got to have their heads on straight, know what they're doing from the drop of the puck, go and take care of bloody business against a team that has no business beating you if you want to consider yourself any kind of a contender. So get yourself in there and go get 2 points and build some confidence on it and figure out, a little piece about your identity and who you are, and then go on to the next one. I just want to see this train start chugging until it's a bullet train down the tracks going into the playoffs. And hopefully that's their MO in that locker room as well.
Big question for you. Do we see Reeves, Jack-Eye round 2?
Good question, man. It seems like that's like a long time ago now with the Matt Rempe story coming into play. And, I think Jack-Eye went down to the minors for a bit and hasn't really been making a whole lot of noise with the fisticuffs. And, Revo took a big old break there too from the scrapping, from being scratched and being injured, and seems to be kind of back now. I would bet the under. I would think it's less likely to happen. I think they're going to be focused on other things, but We'll see how the game goes. If guys are banging and crashing and getting involved and running their mouths and calling people out and hitting the wrong people and getting in front of the goalie and doing things, they could end up going. But I just, for some reason, I don't even know why. I just don't. I don't see them coming out opening shift and challenging each other. No.
We'll see. I do think it happens. I do think it happens Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. Ryan Reeves is back in the mix. He's playing really, really well, but it's a sneaky big game for the Maple Leafs following what transpired on Monday and Thursday, specifically against the Boston Bruins, another original six matchup. And every time, it doesn't matter. Montreal is a team that subtracted quite a bit off that roster. They're a cellar dweller. They always play the Maple Leafs tough. I don't expect anything different. On Saturday, they traded Jake Allen earlier today, so Samuel Montembeault or Caden Primo will start for that game. And Joel Edmondson, by the way, hearing he's dealing with a bit of the flu, so I don't know if he's going to play in that game. But Joel Edmondson at some point in time, pardon me?
Can those guys get some vitamin C in them or
I know.
what?
This guy came from somewhere else, too.
I know. It's like a month long of slowly having a virus go through the locker room, getting pretty annoying, but better now than the playoffs, I guess. But yeah, it'd be nice to see this guy in the lineup and see how he matches up with his pairings and whatnot. And maybe we'll have to wait even longer, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it is, because when you make deadline pickups, you want to see them on the ice. But just looking quickly at the Maple Leafs schedule, I don't believe they play. I think they're off. Yeah, they're off till next Thursday after tomorrow's game against the Montreal Canadiens. It's technically a 3-game road trip, but I'm sure they'll come home after the Habs game. Then they're at Philly, your old stomping ground, next Thursday. So we'll see if Joel Edmondson does play in that game, potentially in his debut in a revenge look against the Montreal Canadiens. He was excellent a couple years back in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Major announcement. Betano is the official partner of Copa America 2024, taking the beautiful game to new heights in the Americas. Join Betano on their journey of passion, unity, and unforgettable football moments. Any bets you like for Saturday night? The one bet I do like that's been hitting like crazy, Bobby McMahon over 2.5 shots on goal. I'm going to crazy depths to get my money these days.
Cool. I like that, man. He's playing with some big boys and he's been producing, and I don't imagine Vegas has totally caught up to that. So something like that you could jump on. What was I going to say? Over 1.5 goals in the first period total. I like to cash on that quite a bit. I think that this could possibly be an offensive powerhouse game where they're scoring early and often. I think there's reason for the Montreal Canadiens to be getting up and be excited to play the Leafs, which they always do well. And the Leafs are looking to respond after, a bit of a rough week and come out of the gates hot. So I think there could be 2 goals scored in the first period.
Fair enough. Okay, so just to recap from Friday, the Maple Leafs, quiet as we probably suspected, acquiring Connor Dewar from the Minnesota Wild for a 4th-round pick in 2026. He's essentially a 4th-line center, so add some depth. And that goes with the likes of Ilya Lyubushkin in the last week, Joel Edmondson, and Cade Weber, who's a prospect, unsigned. If he doesn't sign by August 15th, he'll become a free agent, a 6'7" mutant, who is a shot blocking machine, is what Colby Cohen said. So he's not going to factor into this lineup anytime soon, but a quiet deadline overall. What were your thoughts, your final thoughts here, Rosie?
They plugged some holes. They did what they could with what they had to work with and what they were willing to give up. And at the end of the day, the answer lies within that locker room. It's up to these big boys. I don't think they need some savior to come in. That guy doesn't exist anyways. And even if he did, I don't think it would be right to bring him in and say, here's the answer to anything that we want in the future. I think the answer lies within that locker room already. So those guys got to find their character. They got to find their passion, and they got to find their intensity, and they got to get ready for playoff hockey because, again, the answer is already in that room. It's up to those boys.
Yeah, a couple things for me. I know a lot of people disappointed as we wrap here that the Leafs didn't trade their 1st-round pick. They didn't acquire something of substance. They didn't get that right-handed shooting top 4 guy. It's easier said than done. We can mull trades over all we want on social media. We can talk amongst ourselves. It's so hard to conduct business, especially around the deadline, especially in a cap world. I'm not giving these guys a pass, but I think for what I expected, probably did exactly what I thought. I think Edmondson brings that pedigree in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I like the Lyubushkin fit. He's looked pretty good with Morgan Rielly so far. I like the Dewar ad. I just don't know what people were expecting. And on top of that, I think you made the perfect point. I know it's been out there the last couple of days. This team is going where the big boys go. And ultimately, we have not seen that signature moment in the Stanley Cup playoffs where you see it from Austin Matthews, where you see it from Nylander, where you see it from Marner, where you see it from Tavares, you see it from the big boys, and they drag this team through the fight and they say, this is our year, we're doing it, right? And that's all I'm looking for. Because again, if you're in a fantasy world, if you think Joel Edmondson, Ilya Lyubushkin, Connor Dewar are going to be the difference between this team going far or not going far, I think it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous take. It's about the big boys to me, Rosie. The onus is now firmly on the big boys.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you got to surround them with the right things. I mean, they can't do everything. This isn't basketball where you live and die by two players. So the guys that you just mentioned are going to fill the holes and facilitate, proper defense and a little bit of structure and some heavier bodies back on the back end around their net. They can clear the front of the net, be in the right positions, bang and crash in the corner, and move the puck out of their zone. That's awesome. That's what they needed. But at the end of the day in the playoffs, I just want to see like Mitch Marner, chance after chance, just burying and then go into the net and crash, and no one can find the puck, and he comes out of there and whistle again. He's back checking in. He back checks his ass off and knocks the guy off the puck, turns around, snaps it up to whoever, and fucking then jumps back into the zone and just go and go and go and get in the bench, have some water, fucking be yelling down the bench, let's fucking go. And then holy smokes, baby, all that skill, and then you're bringing the intensity and the jam and the work ethic. That's just what these guys need. I'm sorry. You can't just go out there. Hopefully I get 2-1 this stick. The playoffs aren't that, man. You have to force it. You have to go into places that make you uncomfortable. And these guys, I think, it's time that all the lessons, to quote John Tavares, that they are learning here, it's time to be done learning, and it's time to go out into the world and show what you've learned and show what kind of a player you are. And to me, it's specifically those three guys, and you can count John if you want, but it's their time to go prove that they're worth what they say they're worth and to do something special in the playoffs. So again, the answer is in that locker room as we speak.
Bill Bergwright said Nick is the biggest piece of shit casting baby covering the Leafs. Love Rosie, but Nick is begging to get cross-checked in the face. And Donnie Does Dishes, our guy, says, damn, Rosie has a wild imagination.
Shit, Mitch could do that, couldn't he? He's got to get some balls going, baby. No, we'll be all right, boys. These guys, I don't know if they can handle losing again. We'll see.
Yeah, this market's going to be on full fucking tilt in the springtime if this team can't do something and push through. But just another adventurous day in Leafs Nation. People very disappointed by the deadline. We get it. But thankfully for all, we'll be, unfortunately for Bill, we'll be there along for the ride all the way through. The stretch drive to the Stanley Cup playoffs is here, Rosie. Great stuff today, buddy.
Sorry, Billy boy. Sorry about my partner here.
I pissed off Bill. I'm a piece of shit casting Leafs fan. Fuck, this guy's not caught my coverage in the last 10 years. I used to be the Leafs radio host on the radio. The one thing I did covering the team was give my fucking opinion on the team. Why do you think I work there anymore? Anyways, we're done. Trade deadline recap show. We're back on Monday. Got a lot of great things in store for the stretch drive to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Looking forward to that. Great job by Jay Rosehill, producer Vic. Outstanding as per usual. Everyone in the chat, we love you guys. At the Leafs Nation 401, please subscribe, and we'll talk on Monday. Decompress. Enjoy that weekend. Hit that subscribe button. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.